because actually the way we do this, the reason we do this is for good intentions, because a lot of teachers are afraid that these poor kids are being absorbed, are being eaten by the hogs, but unintentionally this creates very suspicious kids and selfish kids. We've looked into this, and so something has to change. And this view of man, in my view, also leads to a governance in society that is out of balance. We focus too much on what sometimes people call the hard institutions. They are very important. I'm not pleading that we should put all emphasis on the more soft institutions in society, but there should be a rebalancing here, and that has to do with the view of man that we teach in schools. This is a more relational view of man, which I actually use in my economic methods. My new economic method has two cornerstones. The first one is this one, a more relational view than we typically teach. It starts with rationality, that's what most economists believe in, but very much limited rationality. So not unbounded rationality, but limited rationality. So people need other people to know what is good for them. That also means that their preferences are social. Social in two ways. First of all, their preferences and beliefs are shaped by others. That's the first social aspect. And the second social aspect is that people not only care about pleasure, material welfare, but also other things like purpose in their lives and justice, things like this. So there are also social values that people care for, just not only material values. This is the second cornerstone of my method, which is to create actually a less complicated view of economics by having one red thread, as we say in economics, one big story that you can put all economics in more coherence. 3 steps. It's economics in 3 steps. The first step is the ideal of balance between various goals and interests. The second step is, unfortunately, that there's always a lot of unbalance. And the third way is improve balance. So if you think about it in religious terms, paradise, sin, and redemption. Yes, that is what we do. And you know, each of these steps, they have a certain principle. The first principle is that of mutual benefit, win-win. The second has to do with bounded rationality and bounded morality. I'll get into that. And then there are 3 governance mechanisms to improve things. Hierarchy, think about a government, interchangeability or competition, the market, and then voluntary commitment, and that has to do with ethics, friendship, and that type of thing, the soft institutions. Well, we start with step 1, and I'm going to apply that to finance. It's what is the ideal, the balance between various goals and interests. Now, that you know from ethics, you know it from justice, but as an economist, is the cornerstone of economics. So I'm going to give you very briefly what economics in my view is about, and what therefore also finance is about. The big miracle of economics is that 1 + 1 is 3. Together you can do more. The idea that my gain doesn't have to be your loss, some presidents don't understand that yet. That creates trust in mutual benefit when we share risks with each other. Not many people see finance that way, but finance is a big solidarity machine that, you know, if you are hurt, you get something from other people. We trade risks so that the people who cannot bear the risk, they can shift it to other people. You can share risks together. And also if intertemporal trade, some people need money now, and other people need money later, and they can trade. That's what finance does. And also when people have ideas, they don't have money, and they don't have the capacity to bear the risks associated with those ideas, they can actually get money from other people who can have that risk. So finance is extremely important to have solidarity in society and to actually create innovation, to get human flourishing, if you will. But unfortunately, life is sometimes difficult. We have sin, people. So sometimes things are out of balance. and it has to do with the two limits of our major human capacities. What are two major human capacities? Adam Smith said it already. Fortunately, we have them, but they are limited. Both our rationality and our morality. And that also creates that finance often is not a blessing, but it is a curse. Why? Because it is a way to multiply our mistakes, to multiply our problems. And finance is extremely difficult to govern. Why? First of all, because most people don't understand finance. They make a lot of mistakes in trading time and trading risks. And they look a lot at other people, what other people do, which leads to hedging behavior. You do simply what other people do. This causes a lot of macroeconomic fragility. And then a toxic mix with limited morality. People not only look at their own interests, but we have a lot of people there who actually exploit all this complexity to deceive. Finance is not only a solidarity mechanism, it's actually also a den of robbers. Yes? Sharks fishing for fools. Maybe you know the latest book of Schiller and Akerlof about the economics of deception. And often, the government tries to do something about the herding behavior by offering guarantees, but then these are being exploited by these sharks. And, they want to have stability, but actually these policies create more fragility. And finance is extremely complicated because there are so many groups involved. It's not only a very difficult subject, but the interlinkages, the externalities, if you will, in economics term, are incredible. So governance is the main issue in finance. It's very hard to govern. It looks very much like healthcare is a similar, because the product people don't understand, and how do I trust that then other people take the decisions for me? In finance, it's even more problematic. So finance, healthcare, education, by the way, is another sector. It's very hard to govern. So I'm going to the last step here, the third step. We have these three ways of governing things, and my argument is here that we focus too much on regulation, hierarchy, and actually on competition, interchangeability or liquidity at the expense of these. All these things are important. It's just a question of balance between the various things. And I'm going to explain that how we govern a lot of our financial relations. They are based on control and on liquidity, if you will, voice and exit. And of course, debt is a complete contract. What a debt contract does, it says in advance exactly what the other party needs to do, namely pay you so much and so on. It's a complete contract. And of course, that's not without reason, because that gives the creditor, who's vulnerable, if he gives money to the debtor, he's vulnerable, there's the chance of unbalance. It balances that, it gives more power to him. But there are problematic aspects of debt contracts, of complete contracts, and that are these. Often inefficient risk sharing, because the debtor bears all the risks of the component of the project, also something that he can't affect, which leads to inefficiency, inequitable, and instability. And also it can lead to bad incentives. Of course, this is aimed at a balance of win-win. But because that is a very asymmetric contract, in which the risk, if it goes bad, is actually not for the debtor, but for the creditor. And that creates all kinds of new incentives for the debtor to take risks. Because by taking risk, he gets the upside, and he can shift the losses to the creditor. That's the problem with limited liability. And that creates, in good times, excessive risk-taking, and in bad times, because there's too much debt in the economy, it leads to no risk-taking. Nobody wants to take up that's the problem with the debt. So it creates instability. And of course, governments then try to do something about this by creating guarantees, but this leads to even worse incentives, because now the creditor and the debtor can actually shift the risk to a third party, which is the government. So the government wants less risk, but it creates more risk. It's the moral hazard problem, as economists know. And then the third thing, and that is called an element in a somewhat richer view of man, that if you control people a lot, you tend to crowd out their intrinsic motivation. You know, we work with complete contracts. We basically say what the other party needs to do, and that's not very motivating. That's not, we are called as people to make our own decisions, to have our own responsibility. And there's definitely some good things in it, because the flexibility of the creditor, we call that exit, disciplines the debtor, because if he doesn't go for the interest of the creditor, then the creditors can get rid of their claims. But also here we have a lot of problematic aspects, because this assumes that everybody has correct information. But of course that's often a problem. Everybody looks at the other party, and that can lead to panics, why we need central banks to often, but sometimes intervene. The reputation mechanism often fail. Another problem of transactions is that it discourages specific investments. What are specific investments? These are investments that are only yield revenues if the relationship stays intact. So for example, getting to know the other party is a specific relationship, because if the specific investment, because if the relationship fails, you know, there's no return on that investment. And so there is an illiquidity premium.